Countless generations of people have called the American Southwest home. There's a place where the evidence of this is on full display. It's a unique spot, full of rock art, representing thousands of years of indigenous cultures. Nearby, there's an abandoned ghost town, where a mining operation once took place. In nooks and crannies throughout this landscape, the traces of these people can still be found. In this episode, I explore this fascinating area, and along the way, I'll answer some of your most frequently asked questions. I hope you enjoy the video. I had reached the first panels of rock art. This is a phenomenal gallery. The only downside is that because it sits right next to a dirt road, there's been a significant amount of graffiti and vandalism over the years. I took most of my footage here with the drone, because these panels are large. This one is at least 30 feet from end to end. They also sit a ways above the ground, evidence of soil erosion over the centuries. In these images, there are two distinct styles of rock art present. The red pictographs are Barrier Canyon style, likely over 2,000 years old. Some would date them over 5,000 years old. The other style is Fremont in origin, likely 1,500 to 700 years old. There's much to see and wonder about here. Anxious to get off the beaten path, I started wandering around. About a month ago, I posted a question on my page and just asked you guys, hey, what kind of questions do you have for me? What are the things that maybe you've wondered about that I've never, addressed in a video? You guys are awesome. There were over, I think, 600 different questions. So I'm not going to be able to answer all of them today, but I'm going to try to answer the ones that were, most frequently asked. I've got them written down on my phone here. So the first one is regarding gear. What kind of water filter do I use? What kind of sun hoodie am I wearing? Although I'm not actually wearing one. So I've got links to all the gear, or at least most of it, that I use in each of my video descriptions. And so you can just hit that little drop down thing and get a list of the main things that I use and that I like using out here. And I do update those fairly frequently because I am constantly trying out new gear. Sometimes I find something that I like better than another item. Look at this thing up under the shade here. It's kind of a semicircle of sorts. Although looking at it closer, I think it's just naturally leaching out of this rock, some maybe iron oxide or something. But I'm not totally positive. So another fairly easy one is I've seen probably over 1,000, different questions about snakes. And, do I see them? What do I do about them? Well, if you watched the video I released last week, it's the first time I filmed a video and actually seen a snake. Maybe we watched too much Indiana Jones or something growing up as a kid, and like we saw those like pits of snakes, and we just sort of have this vision of the desert just crawling with snakes. And I mean, that's definitely not my experience. Yeah, I mean, I think all of last year I spent probably over 100 days hiking around in the desert. I think I saw 5 rattlesnakes all of last year. Another similar question is about mountain lions, or do I carry any sort of protection like a gun or something? In the Southwest, pretty much no, never. Once in a while I will carry bear spray if I'm up in higher elevations, and I think that there could be a pretty significant black bear population. If you're not familiar with bear spray, it's basically like pepper spray for bears. But I mean, you can use it on, people or animals, other animals, a mountain lion or something, if you needed to. Now, when I'm in grizzly country, further north, then yeah, I always carry bear spray. I don't carry a firearm. If I was doing maybe a lot of backcountry fishing or something, I would probably consider bear spray and some kind of a firearm. But generally speaking, yeah, I've seen grizzlies out in the wild, but I've never had like a scary encounter. And again, understanding their patterns, understanding ways to mitigate your chance of spooking one of them is probably the best defense. Kind of curious to follow this side canyon up a ways and see what might be up here. Well, it hasn't really panned out to be anything more than just a shallow wash. I've been looking up under some of these kind of sheltered overhangs just to look for any rock art, but I think I'm going to head back to where I left the car. Let's get a little juicier questions. Okay, so UFOs. Have I ever seen a UFO or other unexplainable event in the night sky? Drum roll, please. Sort of. Let me explain. Okay, so UFO in the sense of what most of us probably think of, when we think of UFOs, little aliens of some type, flying around spaceships. No, I wouldn't say I've had any experiences like that. The strangest thing, though, that I've ever seen in the night sky that I still legitimately have no explanation for is something I saw over Denver a while back. It was so weird and strange and unlike anything I've ever seen before or after, that first off, I was like, is there like some attack going on? Is America being attacked? I'm trying to think how I would even describe it. It was like these things floating slowly. They were high. They were very high up, but they were sort of slowly floating down. It was like 4 or 5 sort of balls of light. To this day, I have no idea what that was. If somebody's like, oh, I've seen that before and it's this or it's that, I would love to hear. But yeah, I don't necessarily attribute it to aliens, but it was strange and unexplainable. Wow, check these out. I somehow managed to miss those originally. So the main panel is there, but this over to the left is actually very interesting as well. I know it's always hard to tell scale, so here's my hand just to give you a little idea. I spent a long time staring at this one. It's got to be one of the most unique figures I've seen anywhere. So there is a piece of private property here with a fence around it. But there's a lot of rock art up under these overhangs. And honestly, some of those figures back there are probably some of the biggest, if not the biggest, anywhere around here. This is the best angle I can get. Then even here in the center, there's some more, what looks like Fremont style art up there. As you can see, the amount of rock art in this area is pretty unique. I can't help but wonder why. Why here? It seems so ambiguous to me. Sure, there's a spring nearby, and it is along a natural route of travel, but I still wonder, was there a deeper significance to this spot? Before I left this area, I stopped at one more panel. This one showcases a third style of rock art, Ute. The Utes are still a federally recognized Indian tribe. This art probably dates from about 150 to 500 years ago. Well, it's probably a fitting time for another couple of questions. So here we go. Have you ever had any supernatural or paranormal encounters out there? Yeah, definitely. So just my personal beliefs. I'm a Christian, and so in the Bible we see Jesus go out into the wilderness a lot to pray and reflect and seemingly reconnect with God. And so the outdoors and more specifically the backcountry has just really been a place for me to connect with God. And I've had, numerous experiences, life-changing experiences out in these places. And so, very much for me going out into these places is, it's a spiritual thing as well as a physical thing. I would imagine, though, that the question is also interested in, have I had any sort of encounters with spirits or ghosts? How do I answer this? Ultimately, I would say yes. I have sensed spiritual things, and in those instances, I've kind of been like, yeah, I don't know what this is, and so I'm not going to engage with it because I don't think it's something we should trifle with. I think there are legitimate real life consequences or benefits depending on what we do in the spiritual world. So it's it's a tricky thing, isn't it? Speaking of ghosts, I hopped in my car to head further up the canyon towards the old ghost town. So I've heard this is the company store, which would make sense that the thing sort of designed to show the power and the consistency of the company would be by far the biggest and most solidly built thing out here. I found an old photograph of this spot from 1920. You can see this building in the middle. So I assume this is kind of like the basement level, that the floor would have, been along here. There's the door. So what I entered was actually probably like a basement, little basement door or something. It's interesting to think about the business done in here and, just the lives of countless people come and gone. Fire ring and something metal here. I don't know what that would have been. What was working in this town like? I'm sure like most times and places, there were mixed experiences. This old town was the site of a coal mining operation that took place here in the first half of the 1900s. At its peak, about 500 people called this place home. A railroad serviced the town and transported coal out of the canyon. The town had its ups and downs, but what eventually killed it was the changing needs of the mid-20th century. The coal market plummeted, and the town was abandoned. Okay, next up, have you ever found a site that you believe you're the first person to visit? I would say most likely not. The only reason I don't say completely no is there was this one site a number of years back. I was with a few friends. We were in the Grand Canyon. We were on a rafting trip, and so we were pretty remote. We had hiked up just off trail, done some significant scrambling, and we came upon, like, out in the middle of just this, blazing, sun-baked plateau area, there was this massive boulder, and it was really the only shade within probably miles. A couple of us, myself included, kind of saw it. We sort of trailed over that way. There was this old sort of wall in a part of it. There was this perfect arrowhead just like right in the dirt. Some pieces of pottery, and honestly probably more had we looked around, but we were kind of in a hurry. But it was one of those sites. I mean, it's captivated me. I don't entirely know where it is. I have a general idea, and I've thought about going back. I mean, it would take, for me, coming in from the rim, a backpacking trip, I mean, we're talking 5-day, expedition really to try to get there. So it's on the radar. So were we the first people there in centuries? I don't know, but that's the only site that does make me think, man, we were pretty stinking remote. There's just been so many, hikers, backpackers, desert rats, miners, cowboys, hunters, just like so many people in the last 150 years wandering the Southwest and the canyons that, even finding a spot that you're like, man, I don't think many people have been there. I just always hesitate to be like, oh, I'm the only one who's seen this. It's like, yeah, most likely not. All right, let's cross the street and see what's over here. This was a pretty good sized building, but whatever it was, time has not been kind to the wooden frame. In hindsight, I believe we're looking at the remnants of this building here, which I've read was an old boarding house. It's kind of cool. There's an old frame of a car back there. I'm definitely not a car guy, but I do find old cars pretty interesting. I'm curious, what make and model this would have been. How many miles did this thing have on it? So, how about climbing? Do I ever scare myself? Yeah, definitely. And how do I get back down? Well, first rule of climbing is you never go up something that you're not confident you can go down, because most of the time, climbing up something is easier. So how do I get down? Generally speaking, just go the same route I went up. So what do I do when I scare myself? A lot of it, as maybe cliche as it sounds, is just take some deep breaths, calm yourself. Fear in that sense is going to make you climb worse than better. And you just kind of have to put it, mind over matter in some ways, and just be like, all right, do the things I know to do and get myself out of here. I continued searching around the old town. This building was of particular interest because it appeared to have been the victim of a significant rockfall event. Believing I had seen all that the town had to offer, I started wandering around some side canyons. While driving, I passed another little side canyon, and I just can't help myself, so let's go check out and see if there's anything in there. Look up under the shade there. I can't tell if those are natural or some other pictographs. Oh wow, yeah, there's definitely some stuff up under here. So behind this bush, I first noticed those two red lines, and I can't tell if those are supposed to be people. It's hard to get a good angle. So this is different. So in the middle, there's a figure. I'm not so much talking about this though, but over here, it's almost like he was painted with like a pretty thick layer of kind of whitish mud, and it's starting to crack and break away. There's another example of that right over here. I don't know if those are more modern. I don't know that I've ever seen that before. I don't know if you can see it. There's some very faint sort of painted lines on here, but what they are, I couldn't tell you. Same deal a little bit further on. This one in the center looks like he's upside down, doesn't it? The closer I look, the more I see. This looks almost like charcoal over here. Maybe some kind of an elk or a deer. Very faded again, mostly faded lines. Notice there's some old bone fragments down here. How did I get interested in history? Well, honestly, I've been interested in history as long as I can really remember. In second grade, we had to read Little House on the Prairie. And, I think before I even really understood what history was, I guess I'd be considered sort of historical fiction, historical nonfiction. I don't really know. I had to interrupt that because as I'm sitting here talking, I'm realizing there's something man-made here across the canyon. Look at. So up here, that is definitely not a natural rock stack. It looks like maybe further on there's something more. Pause, Little House on the Prairie. What is that? Huh. Yeah, that is definitely not a natural pile of rocks. As far as getting up, it does seem like you could maybe come in from the top here, walk around here, probably scramble up that. That gets a little thin, and access it that way. I think it's a mission for the drone, at least at first. My initial theory of access was correct. The unknown structure is here. You could drop down from the top, traverse along, and then scramble up to it. That's undoubtedly what was done by whoever put it there. I flew the drone in closer to get a look at the structure. Satisfied there was nothing in there, I didn't make the climb. But it really surprised me and made me wonder. Was it a centuries-old storage site? Or a cache used by some cowboy or miner in the last 100 years? You just never know what you're gonna see out here, do you? Okay, so history, I was just fascinated by it and life in the 1800s. And I mean, I don't even know if you had asked me, as a second grader, Andrew, what's history? Like, I don't even know that I knew, but I seem to always have been drawn to it. The next big historical thing in my life I can think about was in 5th grade. We did a section in one of my classes about the American Civil War. And I don't know what it was. I just got obsessed. And I mean, for years, the American Civil War time period, I just studied it, throughout middle school and high school, college. I still find it a very fascinating time period, but I definitely have branched out a lot. So yeah, I mean, I just kind of always have loved history. I majored in it. At the time, majoring in history maybe isn't the best career decision, but I was fascinated with it, and I just wanted to do something that I was interested in. Kind of in a roundabout way, got into guiding and I guess this as well. Well, if you enjoyed this kind of question and answer format, let me know. There's still plenty of questions I could answer. I could easily, make one of these every few months. If you guys enjoyed the format, if not, no worries. As always, thank you all for watching. This channel wouldn't be what it is without your continued involvement.